and welcome back to the Cardboard Herald, my chance to talk with creative gamers and game creators. And I have probably the most ambitious, hustlingist, the person who is out there doing everything in the world, being the face of indie board games on the internet, back on the show. Welcome back, Carla Kopp.
Hey, it's great to be back. I'm so excited. And I mean, that intro was pretty good. It's like, whoa, really? But yeah, I guess.
Yeah, well, I really think that you are the person who is just like constantly doing stuff. You're engaging with an audience. You're being on every podcast. You're constantly looking at new game designs. I see articles with your name included. I see articles that you may have even contributed to. I feel like you are one of the hardest working people in the biz, and it really shows with how much people love working with you and talking with you like I'm doing right now. I mean, what, you've been on the Cardboard Herald like 5 times in total at this point. This is our 3rd interview, and then you were on the like favorite gaming memory episode, and then you were on the like roundtable at PAX Unplugged last year.
Yeah, and hopefully I'll be on the roundtable this year too.
Yeah,
if it happens.
You're going to PAX Unplugged again?
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. So I might just have a 20 by 10 booth.
Good.
Maybe.
I'm going to be checking out your booth. I've certainly upped my game too. Instead of doing like little cell phone camera photo shoots and everything with a little lapel mic that I'm like holding in front of people, I'm actually going to have, useful equipment this year. And we'll have Rob back this year. Unfortunately, Chris isn't going to be able to make it. He did this whole like moving to another state and having a baby, and apparently that like swamps all your resources for like a year, but he wants to make it back again to just play a bunch of games and also participate in the Cardboard Herald stuff again next year. So I'm super excited. It's going to be a killer time. That was probably my favorite convention. I don't know. What's your favorite convention experience?
I'm not sure really, because as I keep going to conventions, like it used to be Origins. Origins was fantastic, and then I went to Origins as a publisher with a booth, and I had to learn a lot of things because I made a lot of bad choices, and afterwards I was like, whoa, I'm the most tired I've ever been ever. So there's all that, like, these conventions have just changed. Like, every time I go, like, the first times I went to Gen Con, I went as just a person. Like, I was a designer at that time, but I didn't, like, really know people. So I went there, and I got to meet a couple people. But, like, I also got to just wander around. But last Gen Con, I was, like, in a booth for most of the time. And when I wasn't in the booth, I was, like, constant meeting with people. And, like, the meeting with people was great because I just got to meet with person after person, and it was fantastic. But it was a lot different than that laid-back, like, let's actually just sit and play a couple games.
Totally.
Mood.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like, you've had quite the transition at this point. I mean, you just said that you were just a designer at the time of the old convention experiences. Do you still view yourself as, like, Carla Kopp designer, or do you view yourself primarily as Carla Kopp publisher? I mean, I think we hit on some of this stuff last time you were on, but really at this point, like, if you had to put something on a business card, something that represented who you are and what your role in the tabletop gaming space is, what would you primarily understand yourself as?
That's a hard one because, like, publisher, it really fits, but I really like to give feedback on games and, like, just consult with others on games. Like, at Gen Con, I had a number of people that just, like, reached out and was like, Carla, let's play this game and you can, like, help me fix it. Or, like, let's pitch this game. And then I would, like, actually start a design session, like, right there. So I really enjoy that. And I want to maybe be more of the consultant kind of person. Like, wouldn't that be great if people just brought me board games, I could play them, and I could be like, oh, okay, this is where I think you should go in the design sphere, and just try all these things and then come back to me after you do all the hard work. Like, I just had the super fun, like, 20 minutes of design, and I don't have to do, like, all the, like, actually changing of spreadsheets and stuff. I just get, like, Yay, happy design time.
I think you could do that. I mean, you could be that person, like a producer of board games. You'd be like the Rick Rubin of board games. You'd be like, you know what, Metallica, we're going to get down to the essence of what you are. And Red Hot Chili Peppers, you know, you've been doing this whole thing, but it's really kid stuff. Let's kind of evolve this. Beastie Boys, you know, let's harness this power and kind of pivot a little bit. You know, like you could be the person who comes in and says, like, let's get down to what the best aspects of what you're doing is, emphasize that, and then leave it in their hands to really make the magic happen.
Like, that's happened so many times at these different conventions that I really want to start doing that. Specifically also with solo modes, because it seems like a lot of designers, they just design games for 2 to 4 players, and then I ask them, like, oh, have you tried this with 5? Have you tried a solo mode? And they're like, no. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. I guess, because, I recently signed a game, it was Big Easy Busking, and, by Josh Mills, he's really fantastic, but I was like, oh yeah, it's 2 to 4, why is that? And he's like, yeah, haven't tried it with 5, and then he went off and he tried it at 5, and he's like, yep, just works. I was like, great, that's so cool. And then, we tried it at 6, and it's like, yep, just works at 6, that's cool too.
Yeah, well, I mean, being able to get people to come out of their shell and the preconceived notions and getting them to focus on things that they wouldn't necessarily gravitate to. I mean, I imagine for a lot of people, especially their earlier game designs, they're probably designing in a way for their own preferences or for their own game group and not really thinking about, like, how do I expand this to something that has broader appeal to other gamers and game groups? And so if you typically play 2 to 4 player games, then you're probably going to design a game that's 2 to 4 players. And that's actually something that I've seen you kind of evolve on, because the first time that we talked, I think we were talking a lot about Stellar Leap, and you were talking about how you were adding in a solo mode to that. And since then, you've really become like this solo mode evangelist, which is super cool, because even if I don't play a ton of solo games, the ability to have solo play is like not just nice, but also kind of imperative to the growth of this industry and the maturation. Like it's a whole new method of play that is forsaken if it's not considered, and it totally is worth that consideration.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like, for the people that do play solo games, like, yeah, they definitely need it, but it gives you another option. Like, especially the people that like to learn games, they can learn it the solo way, which is much better than, like, learning it with other people, because then you have to teach everyone. And then, so they learn it as solo, and then they go and they can easily teach it to their friends, and it's an enjoyable experience all the way through.
This is actually timely. I was working on this video. I have some of these videos where I do, like, it's like a 3-game recommendation thing on a given subject. So it might be like 3 spooktacular games to play during Halloween, or 3 I guess expansions that take it to 11, 3 games beyond Catan, you know, that type of thing. And I am working on one that's 3 solo games, and I have a couple working titles, but I'll get to that later. But the thing is that solo gaming for so long was just play with a dummy player, and that sucks. Like, I hate when that happens. Like, it just feels weird, and like you're having to pretend that you don't have information that you have, or, you know, like you're just facilitating something that doesn't exist, or imitating something that isn't real. Whereas if you have a well-designed solo game, you're actually playing competitively with the table, and it has stakes, and there are so many really cool, clever designs that I'm thrilled about the development and the progression of how solo games are almost an expectation now. And that's cool. So, moving on to other things, because we could talk about solo games forever. We really need to hit on why you're here today. So, for the people who are at home if you are listening as this goes live, then the Dreams of Tomorrow Kickstarter just launched. So the next big Weird Giraffe Games project. So Carla, give us your nutshell pitch of what this game is, why it's awesome, why people should check it out.
Okay, so Dreams of Tomorrow. It's a set collection shifting rondel game about building dreams for 1 to 6 players that plays in about 45 minutes. In the game, you're a dream engineer and you're trying to save your present by sending dreams to the past. And you want to create really good dream sequences that are really impactful, but that also resonate with the person that is experiencing the dream. So you want to construct really good dream sequences to send. And you can also pick up dreams just to use their abilities, because dreams, they have sort of this power, and they can the area that you work in is this shared consciousness area where you can affect the other players in the game. So you're all on this rondel, which is actually not round, and I understand that that's weird, but that's okay.
But you're a weird giraffe.
Yeah, so that's one of the things about the games I've been producing lately is oh, okay, this is weird, it's okay, it's just different, you'll get used to it, it's cool. So the rondel, you can shift it with all your dream abilities. So you can shift it so you can get to the spot, so you can weave a dream faster or catch the dream that you want. So you have to take advantage of all the abilities at your disposal, but when you weave the dream together, you lose the ability to activate the dreams that you've woven together. So you have to make sure you do it in the right order so you don't lose all your powers, but you also need to actually make sure you finish the dream sequence, because dreams that you're just using for their powers that you've just caught, they don't mean anything until they're into the dream sequence.
Right. Sounds like your cat is a big fan of the game too.
Yeah, my cat is I don't know, earlier today I thought he was lost because he wasn't meowing at all, and now he's all meows. All meows all day.
But anyway, so back to the Dreams of Tomorrow. Now, this game, it has a vibe, an oeuvre, a presence that feels like it kind of fits within the Weird Giraffe wheelhouse. It's quirky, it's a little bit weird, but it's colorful. It's a really unique theme, but it also sounds very, very different than the other games in the Weird Giraffe line. Do you consciously think about diversifying your product line or your catalog when you're taking on new designs, or even designing games of your own at this point?
I definitely do. When I'm designing my own games, I don't like to revisit the same mechanics, because that's kind of boring, actually. When you are designing and publishing a game, well, if you're doing it really well, you should be playing that game over and over and over again. So these games, when people pitch them to me, if I'm oh yeah, I don't know if I could play this 100 times, then I can't sign it, because I need to be able to play it 100 times and iterate on it and make sure it's really good. So that's another reason why I like to get different mechanics. But if I get all these different mechanics but a similar way and similar art style ish, well, my art style is neon rainbows, basically. I don't know if anyone else has noticed that, but I try to do something rainbow in all my games, because rainbows make things better.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's we could call that Kopp's law.
Yeah. So I also try to get mechanics where big easy busking. It's area control, but it's different area control. The thing that I really like in that game is that you're a musician and you're playing in different areas in New Orleans, and you decide where you're going to play. But then on your next turn, when you see where everyone else is playing, then you decide how you're going to leave your energy or not leave your energy, and that's the area control mechanic. And I think that's really cool, because it's you're half showing what you're doing, and then you can completely take it back if other people do other things, but you don't know exactly what they're doing. So just having mechanics that are just a little different, that's really what I try for.
That's really cool. And that's a cool approach. I know that a lot of people tend to iterate on the designs of the past and have had a lot of success in that. I mean, you take a look at some of the most celebrated board game designers like Uwe Rosenberg, Agricola, Caverna, A Feast for Odin, they all have a lot of shared DNA. And then you have things like Patchwork and Cottage Garden, and then even A Feast for Odin all have some elements of similar design there and incorporating in new ways and making unique games, but still having the same kind of focus and attention. But that's strictly from a designer perspective, that's the kind of thing that they produce, whereas you have the luxury as a publisher now, and of course as a publisher who designs and assists with designs, who Rick Rubinifies games, that you can be more selective about skill sets. You can tap into people who can design games that are completely different than the game designs that you make. And that's something that shows in the catalog and is one of the most exciting things for me to see about Weird Giraffe, is that you really are expanding and becoming a much larger entity with a product line, and that sounds so adult and responsible.
Oh yeah, definitely. So the other day I'm in the process of making a contract for my last game in 2019, and I'm like, whoa, I have a whole year planned out. I have a timeline, and that's so cool and adult and a real business person. So
yeah, I feel like when I have maybe 4 podcasts in the bank that are all scheduled, I'm on top of the world. I feel at that point, I'm like, this must be what Mark Maron feels like on WTF. This is I'm on top of the world. I'm a real pro here. I got all my stuff figured out. And that's the point where I go, I should start a whole new endeavor that's going to make me fall further behind than I ever could imagine possible. But, it is what it is. So the thing about Dreams of Tomorrow, when I was reading up on it and when you were talking about it with me here, this is recalling a game that we talked about last time, Totemic Rights. So this is a shifting of that game into this Dreams of Tomorrow game, right? They're one and the same, or is this the design evolved into something new? What's the transition here?
So Totemic Rights, I was really excited about it because I wanted to showcase a part of Native American culture and get Native Americans involved and part of this. So I went out to try to get a Native American illustrator, and you were actually really helpful in giving me different people to follow up on. And I tried this, and what I discovered was making a game about totem poles is pretty offensive.
Uh-huh. It can be, yeah.
Yeah, so,
sensitive territory, we'll call it that.
Yeah. Some people are sensitive about this area, and I wanted to, involve people and make sure it was culturally sensitive, and I could just find no one that was really interested in helping me out. And it made me really uncomfortable to take on another culture's basically cultural appropriation, if you don't involve anyone of that culture. So I was like, okay, let's think about this game. Instead of totem poles, what else could you build? And I started down all these different ideas, and then I thought about dreams. I'm not really sure where I got to it. Maybe I was dreaming and I was like, oh yeah, you could put dreams together. But it really kind of fit better than totem poles, I thought, actually, because I kept on going down and making more themes, and when you were building the totem poles and when you're moving on the rondel to create the totem poles, one of the things that happens is you give other people resources. But why would you do that when you're creating totem poles other than you're a nice person, I guess? Everyone is just nice and gives things to others. But if you're in this collective consciousness where you're all basically in a dream, and you're it's kind of like Inception, yeah, where what you do in that collective consciousness, it kind of if you get a lot of experience, it kind of puts experience out there for everyone else. So I thought that just worked better than totem poles.
Yeah, I like that. It's a shared influence through subconscious meditations or something. It's very transcendental. I dig it.
Yeah, and I started learning all these different things about like collective consciousness. Like that's a thing you can look up, and there's like fragments of consciousness, and like there's all these things where like I was trying to name stuff, and then I would like Google it, and I'd like go down the like the Wikipedia path of like learning all these things, and it's like if you know anything about like dreams, like you'll be like, whoa, like this makes sense. But like for other people, like they'll just be like, oh yeah, they're words, I guess.
I think I just want the summary of this podcast to be like, if you know anything about dreams, you'll just be like, whoa.
Yeah, I hope so, at least. Like, that's kind of also what I want to do with my games, is, like, if you know the thing, or, like, even if you don't know the thing, and you play the game, you'll just learn things. Like, you'll get these phrases in your head, and you'll know more about the subject material, but you also had fun. So, like, because educational games themselves are kind of, like, people don't like them, like when it's like, oh, an educational game, but when it's like, oh, it's a hobby game that just teaches you things also.
Yeah.
I want to get into that.
With the shift from totemic rights to Dreams of Tomorrow, which I think that sounds like an awesome shift. Like that sounds like it really is a deserving fit. The more you describe it, the more I'm really picking up what you're putting down as far as why it just kind of makes more sense for the mechanical structure of the game. Did you find yourself or working with the designer changing any of the mechanical elements of the game after you had done a shift in the design, or did it have a pretty much one-to-one re-implementation in this new theme?
So after the shift, it was basically one-to-one, like until I started playtesting with that, and like I was telling people the story, and I got the feedback that like, they didn't really feel like they were in a dream, because like sometimes in a dreams, like you have nightmares. Okay.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And I got this feedback a couple times, like that it didn't like there should be something where a nightmare should be involved, because if there's dreams, there's always nightmares. So I started thinking about it, and I also really like puns, even though I'm bad at them. Okay. But
this is why I like you, is you delight in rainbows and puns. So, that's why you have made 5 appearances on this podcast at this point.
So maybe there's a nightmare mode because I wanted a reason to order a bunch of horse meeples.
Oh, that's perfect. And I love it. And I love everything about it.
So in the game, the nightmare, it moves counterclockwise. Like it's actually like kind of like a player. And when it gets to the nightmare's turn, it does something with the rondel or with the subconscious where it just messes with stuff. Because in my mind, like some of the nightmares I've had are like those ones where you're like going down a hallway and you want to do something or you want to get to a door and then you can't because like you never get to the right door. You never like get to the end of the hallway, and that's kind of like the nightmare. Like you want to go somewhere in the subconscious area, but like, oops, there was a nightmare.
Oops, there's an adorable horse meeple blocking your way, and it's the horrific apparition, the personification of all things scary and evil.
Yeah, exactly, and I think it adds, like, another layer to the game. So I tell people, like, well, in the rules, it's like, oh, play with Pleasant Night first, get to know how to play the game with Pleasant Night, and then you can go to Troubled Night with the Nightmare.
That is so cute.
Thank you. So those words were actually Jess from Gameosity. She designed that, or like the words for it. So thank you, Jess. That
is really cool. So, obviously I'm really feeling the Dreams of Tomorrow, and I think everyone should check it out. But I do want to hit on a couple of the other things going on in the Carla Kopp verse, in the expanded Carla Kopp universe here. What's going on with this side project here, the Galactic Raptor games, and I know that you and I have talked, and Dan has been included, about having you both on for a future podcast, because I'm excited about this project. And to me, it's like when, I don't know, Jack White of the White Stripes is like, yo, I'm also in this band Raconteurs, and you know what? I'm also in this band Dead Weather. So, like, are you just kind of expanding to different imprint labels, or what is this?
Okay, so I will talk first about Galactic Raptors and then my other joint projects, because there's a number of those. Okay, because why not? Why not? So, first of all, Galactic Raptor Games, I think it has a purely fantastic name and logo. Like, that is just, it's adorable. So we're going to do good things, obviously, because our first choice was that logo. But the company is me and Nick. Nick is also in Weird Giraffe Games. And Dan Lettsgrigg from Letterman Games. So me and Dan are both in Tiger, which is the indie game network, and we're both publishers there, and we were talking about like how we wanted to do more things, but we just didn't have the bandwidth, and we eventually met at Atlanta Protospiel, and we're like, hey, you like these games that I like we publish kind of the same sort of games, but we both want to do more, so let's do more together. And it's been like really exciting because so there's like a sort of flavor like for all the games that I work on. There's like a sort of like, oh, you can tell that Carla has, you know, made some decisions here. And
she's infested these games.
Yeah, I make them a little weird, probably a little more complicated, etc. They're like I've been told by my design group, because I've only published 3 games so far, but I've designed like 6 and I've signed another like 4. So like they all have a certain little bit that's like, oh yeah, this could be a Weird Giraffe game. So I think Dan's games are like that too, but when we join together and we're both like making decisions on this, like our first game is going to be Animal Kingdoms, which is by Stephen Armani, who is super cool. Like, he is great at things. I like really love working with him. So Stephen Armani plus me and Dan and Nick, like, it just has Animal Kingdoms has really come together really well, and it's a different flavor than both Weird Giraffe Games, Letterman Games. Like, it's its own thing. And
did you find that having the joint label there to have like this combined business venture was necessary in order for it to be its distinct own thing? Are you guys going to continue running this separate business? Like, I guess I'm having trouble understanding like the purpose of it. Is it so that you can maintain autonomy with your own thing that you've cultivated and continue growing, and you don't have to like introduce a new person to it, but this allows you to also have a joint venture with other creative minds?
So I think it's just we went with it. We're like, oh, we could just do it on one of our Kickstarter accounts, or we could make our own business. And we're like, well, we know how to make businesses.
Yeah, so why not?
I mean, it's a trial thing. Like, I think we'll go forward with it because once you actually put in the effort to make a business, it's like, yeah, I did the thing. I'm going to keep it because I did it. But in some of my other collaborative efforts that I've started after that, it's like, yeah, we don't need to make another business because, you know, making another business, that takes effort and money. Like, you have to do all this registering and stuff like that. Like, let's just, you know, have a contract that says, like, we're both doing these different things, but, like, you'd have none of the overhead.
Totally. So what's your other venture here, the other side project?
So I am working with Flat Out Games.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, they're really good people. Really awesome. So I'm really excited about that. I met Sean and Molly at least a year ago. Oh, yeah, at Thanksgiving, because I was in Seattle, and I was like, hey, Seattle gamers, let's hang out. And then I got to hang out with Sean and Molly, and I got to, like, talk to them and play games and stuff. And then we've been meeting up at conventions, and I was going to sign one of their games. It got picked up by somebody else, which is great. Like, their game is still getting made, which is awesome. But I had this certain idea for the game, where it would be, like, 3 games, actually. And they were really impressed with, like, this idea I had. And they're like, oh, okay, instead of signing this game, let's just create new games together. And I was like,
why not?
Okay. Yeah, let's do this. Because, like, well, like, at the time, like, I'd already started working with Dan and seeing how me and Dan worked together and created something that's different than just me working on it, and just having someone else there where I'm like, oh, we could go in one of these two directions and I equally like both of them, and just having somebody go like, oh yeah, I like the first one better, and it's like, yep, like just another deciding person and like another voice is really cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited about that. We should hopefully be getting our first game out, I'm thinking, in summer 2019.
Again, you are like, to me, the hardest working person in the board game space, or at least it feels like that, because of the amount of pies that you have your fingers in. Like, you need to count your fingers, because I'm sure you must be in at least like 25 different pies at this point. So do you ever get any fatigue over that? I mean, you've been cultivating the Carla Koppiness, whether it's part of Weird Giraffe Games or any of these other ventures, for a few years now. Like, are you ever having moments where you're like, man, I am putting so much effort into this thing and I just need a break from it?
No, like, if I could, I would do more board game publishing and design. Like, if I could just quit my job, but like I need my job because of money and bills and stuff. But I think I would do really well at this, like doing it 24/7 and just like, oh, okay, I wake up, I'm just going to do game design and stuff all day. Like, that would be wonderful. I think part of it is that I really focus on learning more. Like, if I did not learn more and get more efficient with everything, like every year, I can feel like, oh yeah, I'm a lot faster. I've cut out all the things that aren't worth doing. And I've also like gotten to know more people. For instance, on this upcoming Dreams of Tomorrow, I'm working with Bebo on marketing because I don't know marketing that well. And one of the things about me is I'm like, if you are like, hey, tell me the things you're bad at, I'm like, oh, okay, how many hours do you have? Let's talk about the things I'm bad at.
Yeah.
Like, well, I think if you're like really, like, if you can just admit that, like, I can admit easily, like, oh, okay, I don't know this thing, so I'm going to go Google it. And then I either know the thing or I'm like, oh, okay, I can't find out the thing. I'll go ask somebody that I think knows it. And then I know it. Like, by the end of the day, I'll figure out, like, more information. So if you are willing to be like, okay, I don't know everything, I'm not perfect, but let's try to go out there and be better. So, like, if every day you try to be, like, just a little bit better, in a year you'll be really noticeably better.
This is interesting because occasionally at my professional job, because I'm a supervisor at my professional job, people will ask me, like, what's something that you're looking for in someone that joins your team? And oftentimes what they're really asking is, like, what are the answers that you expect to see in the questions in an interview that you might possibly do that I am going to be a participant of in the future? And because I work for government, the interview structure is a little bit weird and a little bit more structured, so that way it's a little bit more fair game for everyone. But when I'm talking to someone about, like, what are the things that I'm really looking for a person to join my team, there are skills that are definitely like minimum requirements, things that I need someone to have some degree of comprehension of. But more than anything, it's things like resilience, the ability to take criticism and accept failure and fault, and to continue on, to learn, to persevere, to be able to have some sort of self-motivation and drive that even if I'm not the best, like, I'm not naturally gifted at something, but I can still do really well if I work really hard at it. And I think the reason why that's so important to me to see in other people is, one, because I want them to succeed and I want to help them succeed and I want them to be the best that they can possibly be. And, someone who's naturally resilient on the things that are difficult for them are going to be generally more productive at everything, even the stuff that they are naturally good at. But also because that's been so important to me in my life, because I haven't found that I'm really naturally good at a lot of things, or at least I have a terrible, terrible self-esteem problem where I think everything that I do is garbage. But I can maintain perspective in that I know that things get incrementally better every time. You know, if I can look at a video and go, wow, that is still terrible, but I did do that one clever thing. And I bet you if I research this and I can figure out a new way to do this, I could do it even better that next time. You know, after 10 podcast episodes, I went like, I'm not really a good interviewer. Now that I'm approaching 100, I'm still like, there are a lot better interviewers out there, but I feel like I've found the confidence and the voice in order to get better every time and be able to understand what it is that I'm not doing that I can make an impact on, what I can cultivate, what I can change and shape. And that kind of resilience is exactly what you're talking about, the ability to learn and innovate and to make a better whole, even if it's still not the final product that you were exactly looking for. Which actually, to peek behind the curtain here, I did have some questions that I was writing up before we went into this interview, and that takes me to exactly what my next question was going to be before we even got on this tangent, which was like, what is the most innovative thing that you've done for your own work in the last couple of months? Like something that really changed how you approach weird giraffing or just board game production, publishing, whatever it is that Carla Kopping is.
I think maybe the most innovative thing was that I don't know if it's really innovative, but I learned how to ask for help better, or like, just I was more willing to. Like after working with Dan, I was like, yeah, working with other people is really great. And I started just branching out and being like, hey, we can work on this if you want. Like just being the first person to announce like, oh yeah, like I like you well enough to work on this. And being really open about things. Like when I talk with other designers, like when they're pitching games to me, one of the things I go into is like, oh yeah, I'm really honest. And if you don't like that, just please tell me. But then I'm going to start saying honest words and stuff and like, hey, I want to work with you for these reasons. Part of the reason why I want to work with you is because you're a cool person and I like working with cool people. And secondly, your game is also really good and I really want to do a cooperative thing and I want you to tell me when you think I'm dumb or I've made some bad decision, because I want like complete honesty. And when you're really upfront with people and you get them to be upfront with you, like just the way you work together is so productive and amazing, I think. Like when you take the emotions out of it and you're just like, let's create something cool. Like, if you don't like something, just say it. Just don't attach all your emotions to every one of your ideas, because, you're going to have 100 ideas and maybe one of them will be fantastic and you'll have all these other ones that are like mediocre and weird and won't pan out. So I've really enjoyed like just doing that, and just like, I'm a big introvert, but if I can just start like saying like lots of words to people, and like if you admit weakness to others, like it gets them to open up, and then they're more okay with like admitting failure. Like if you can be like, hey, I'm bad at this, tell me when I'm like, I'd really appreciate it if you told me like when I have bad ideas, like, and you thank them for doing so, like you prove that you're really honest and you're looking for feedback. That's really helped out a lot. From a more thematic standpoint, I think the most innovative thing I've done, or from a design standpoint, I'd say was a nightmare, because, nightmares.
Yeah, of course. You gotta love the pun. It's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that admission of failure and honesty and earnestness with which you approach things is, I think, something that is part of the compelling nature of Carla. You know, it's something that is endearing to a lot of people, and I think it's why a lot of people are attracted to your personality, to really want some success out of you, because you interact with people and engage with them at such a meaningful, sincere level. And that's both the successes and the failures. And like last time that we talked, for example, you were really honest about like facing some personal struggles. Like, how's that going now?
So I wouldn't say it's gotten better. I've made some bad choices. Well, so doctors. I get a lot of anxiety and stuff with doctors. And dentists, I have these feelings on dentists where, like, I went to get my teeth cleaned, and they're like, oh, yeah, you really have to get this stuff done. And then I hear in my head, like, every day after that, like, oh, I really have to get this done. But then I went and I actually had, like, 3 appointments in one day, because happenstance, and I ask lots of questions, and sometimes people misinterpret what I want, because I did not want 3 dentist appointments one after another. Like, that's not my ideal day.
No, I don't think anyone wants that ever.
But like, so my teeth were not hurting. Everything was great. And then I went to the dentist, and then for like 2 weeks after that, it was like just constant pain. Like, it hurt all day, every day. Like, I had to be on all this pain medicine, and it still hurt. But like, if I wasn't on the pain medicine, it just drove me like I couldn't handle it. And I have this heart condition, and stress just kind of makes my heart blow up. So after that, yeah. Well, and I went to Gen Con constantly on pain medicine, and like, I have this noise sensitivity thing, which is not good for conventions. Like, just, I listen to everything, okay? I don't know if you can imagine like being able to hear all the things, and like, I don't know, it's just like a barrage of, whoa, we're at Gen Con and 50 people are talking around me, and they're doing like things with games and stuff like that.
Is it like your brain focuses on each individual thing? Like, I have a real hard time with 2 people talking at once, because my brain is trying to decipher 2 separate things at the same time. I have a really hard time focusing on one thing when there are 2 or more things going on at the same time.
Well, yeah, definitely. So like, if anyone is talking and there's a TV going, I can't listen to either of them. So I have to be like, okay, stop. One, you're like driving my head crazy. Let's either stop talking or stop the TV. Like, I can't have both at the same time.
Interesting. That sounds like pretty much the worst thing ever to go to Gen Con like that. Congratulations for reaching that. In fact, I think that, you know, from now on, that little horse meeple can be the personification of that specific nightmare.
Yes. Well, and the whole, like, you have to be on, like, well, when you're in a booth, you have to be, like, constantly in presentation mode. But also, when I was at Gen Con, I did not have my own booth. Matt from Hit 'em With a Shoe Games was kind enough to like let me sell from their booth, so I was just there. I was selling my games. But most of the people that came to the booth wanted to know about his Be Lives game, and so there was all these Be people around, and I would start like be like, oh yeah, do you want to listen, or do you want to know about this game? I could tell you about this game. And then I'd tell them about the game, and they'd be like, oh, that's cool, I don't buy games. And then they'd go away, and I'd be like, oh, okay, that's neat, I guess, that I just spent like 5 minutes of like it takes a lot of energy just to like be in that whole presentation, like, I'm super excited about this game for 8 hours. Like, I am super excited, but like the whole like meeting strangers, and there's like a sort of rejection in there as well when they're like, oh yeah, I don't want to buy your game, which was weird for Gen Con. I think it's just because I didn't have my own booth, because when I had my own booth at Origins, it was like people were all excited about, like, because they knew Weird Giraffe games.
Right. Well, how do you cope with that? Like when you're dealing with the anxieties and stresses, I mean, you have all kinds of things going on that are constantly on your mind. Not only do you have the business aspect, there's also the fact that you have like long-term medical conditions going on. You have like short-term medical conditions going on. You have like major stressors in your life that are like emotional stressors that have happened that, you know, you've been pretty forthright about online. And then you also have like the miniature rejections and celebrations, like the roller coaster ride of like people thinking things are awesome and then people completely snubbing you. And then you also just have the general day-to-day, I need to get work done. Like, what do you do to cope with all of that? And what keeps you going and feeling fulfilled and motivated and like you're on an even keel and not just constantly going from like 0 to 10?
Well, like when it gets like really bad, I like to think of have you ever watched Kimmy Schmidt?
Oh, yeah.
It's like on Netflix, where like you can do anything for 10 seconds. Yep. So like that's the thing, like when it gets really bad, like I just have to do the next 10 seconds or the next thing, like break it down, like what's the simplest task to get me further. And sometimes that's just like, oh, I have to put this game over here, I have to reset the table, I just have to do like the smallest possible task, and then I'm like, oh, okay, I accomplished something, I did something good, now for the next possible task. I also, so one of the heart condition, like I need to stay super hydrated, like all the time. Like if I ever get not hydrated, it just, my heart freaks out. So it's like, oh, okay, I'm having like a bad time right now, I'm just gonna drink an entire Powerade right now. And then it's like, oh, okay, I did my due diligence, I did a good thing, I won't have to drink another Powerade for like another hour. Like if you're ever at a convention with me, I probably have a giant backpack, and you're like, Carla, why do you need that giant backpack? And I'll be like, I'm carrying 10 Powerades on me right now.
That's reasonable. Like, well, I guess it's better than the alternative of like, this is my backpack I use to steal games.
Yeah. Well, and it has like a lot of prototypes. Or I also do this thing at conventions where like I'm pretty germophobic, okay, because like I hate being sick. I'm the worst sick person. So I go to hotels that have breakfast, and then I have like all my Powerade or water bottles, and I drink a bunch of water the first day, and then I get like 10 bottles of orange juice. And like in my head, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm getting all this vitamin C, and it's gonna make me not sick, right? Yeah. You know, if you drink 10 bottles of vitamin C.
Exactly. That's what the body needs.
Yeah. Well, for some people, I would really like not recommend this because it can trash your stomach, like that acid. But like, I don't know. I've done it so many times at conventions. It's actually really weird because like after I get home from the convention, my body's like, oh yeah, we live on juice now, and I'm like, no, I think we should have real food, and my body's like, nope, pure sugar all the time.
Well, you start doing enough conventions, then that's pretty much it. You know, you have your ritual, and then you're pretty much just chasing the dragon, going from one convention to another, getting more juice highs, and you know, eventually that's not going to satisfy, and you're going to need some other high octane approach in order to get it done.
Those are like the like small things, like when I need to get to the next like hour or like 5 minutes, just okay, focus on hydrating, focus on getting to the like next small task. But like overall, like getting like rid of the like frustration and stuff, like getting out Stellar Leap has been really awesome because every couple of days I just get these super nice comments about how somebody likes Stellar Leap so much. Like, oh yeah, they really enjoyed the solo mode, or one of the backers, I let him like name something, and he paid money to do all these things, and there's like hidden Easter eggs that only I know about in the game, where it was like, oh yeah, my wife loved this thing. And it's like just knowing like every couple of days that I'm like bringing more joy into the world, like I'm making people happy, like that just makes it so much easier.
Yeah, I gotta imagine. You gotta focus on the things that you're successfully doing and not always focusing on the things that you're struggling with. Let's end then with like some real positive thing, an aspirational thing, because that's what I think about when I think of you, and I think that's maybe one of the best compliments that I can give, is that that as vulnerable as you show yourself to be, you have a degree of hope and encouragement and optimism, not just for yourself, but also those around you. And it's always working on real, tangible goals of self-improvement, whether that's through your business, through your health, through your personal goals, things that you want to triumph over. And so in a lot of ways, your story is a story of successive triumphs. So what is like one goal that you are working towards that you haven't shared before, whether that's like a personal goal, a business goal, a creative goal, anything? You know, what is one thing that you are really working towards?
So I really want the community to be really inclusive to everyone. And one way to do this, I feel, is to work with more minorities and to work with more women and people like that. So I've really tried to like reach out. Like if you look at my reviewers, like they should be like over half minorities, and the same with my artists, my illustrators and graphic designers. One way I've really failed in this is that I have not been able to work with that many women designers or like minority designers at all. Like designers are really white and really male.
Yeah. As a white male, I completely agree that that's exactly what's out there.
Yeah, I really want to like reach out and try to do that. Like that's one of my goals, is to get like a better percentage. Like my percentage of minority designers in 2019 is 25%, which is like so low. Like that's crazy low considering that there's way more like just women in board games and stuff. Like, so we like I want people like other minorities to go into like Gen Con and to really feel like they belong. Yeah. Like when Nyctophobia got into Target, like that was so cool because that was the first game that was designed by a woman in Target. So I just wanted to give that feeling to other people, because I've seen like other people have come up to me and been like, oh yeah, like they see me as a woman publisher and that gives them hope, and they're like more willing to go out and actually do this. So I really want to like encourage other minorities to like go, like to be in the community.
Yeah, and, like, or just underserved groups. You know, women aren't necessarily maybe they're a minority within board game design, but you know, women are in theory half of the population roughly, and that sort of inclusion is really important because there are so many systemic reasons why the voices that are out there, whether it's in business or even way, way more so in the tabletop gaming sphere, are cisgender white males. That's not to say that there aren't tons of really talented people who want to break through. When I'm saying what's out there, I'm talking about with a like broad mass appeal, with the spotlight on them. But I know that there are some really incredible reviewers, there's podcasters, there's designers such as yourself, there's publishers out there who are women, people of color, LGBTQ people out there. Like, all of them have unique voices and perspectives. And this is actually something I was talking about with Tony Miller, that so many people are afraid that bringing in voices other than the ones that they're used to is going to somehow stifle the voices that they are necessarily looking for. And that's not really how it works. You know, like bringing in more voices, one, makes the overall product better, you know, more diverse, more hearty, more interesting hobby space to participate in, especially in a thing like gaming. We want fun, interesting, innovative ideas, and different perspectives are going to facilitate that. But also, you know, just because voices are going to come up that can speak to more people, that doesn't mean that the people who are already speaking are going to go away. And we shouldn't be afraid of being more inclusive. Fundamentally, what it comes down to is you, Carla Kopp, shouldn't be a novelty for being a woman designer or a woman publisher. Like, it shouldn't be like, isn't that interesting? A woman designing board games? I'll be, wow, good on her. Like,
yeah, like if I never had to experience that again, because like, yeah, that has happened way too many times in my life. Like that exact thing, but not sarcastic.
Yeah, and I think in a way I'm even guilty of it in the first interview that I did with you, because I had some very specific questions that I was genuinely interested about, like, what is it like being a woman in this space? But, you know, it's not coming from like a, you know, do you feel like you're ready to play with the big boys type of direction. It's more like, man, there are a lot of things that have led to why game stores are full of guys, why there's tons of guys in the podcasting, why there's tons of guys in, you know, the design space. And I would say the majority of them, from my perspective, are welcoming to the idea of new voices. But the ones that aren't can be really nasty and really vocal and really horrific. And what I think it's going to take is people like you who are promoting the interests of other people, and also the responsibility of everyone else like me and everyone who sits down on a table to say, I'm not going to stand for the people who are being jerks and just crappy, horrible people who are making it a bad time for those minorities or underrepresented groups to sit down at the table too. I kind of made that into a bigger thing, but I think that your goal is an incredible one. And I think that, again, I can't wait to see where you are 6 months from now, a year from now, and see all the developments. And I really mean it that I have the best of times in talking to you. And so everyone out there should definitely check out Dreams of Tomorrow. If you're listening to this, it's on Kickstarter right now. Why aren't you checking it out? I'm sure there's going to be some super slick video for you to see everything about it, and tons of reviews and all kinds of stuff. What you can know is that if this is coming from Carla and Weird Giraffe Games, it's coming from a place of genuine intrigue into what games can be and what games can experiment with different themes, with different mechanics, and that it comes from the hardest play testing person in this space. So thank you again for coming on the show, Carla.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Jack. Like, I really, really enjoy this. Like, this is one of my favorite parts about, like, running a Kickstarter, is that I get to, like, come on and talk to you. That's
awesome. All right. Well, I wish you luck with the Kickstarter and every one of your joint ventures from here forth. So go out, everyone, go forth and seek out the Carla Kopp. Thank you for listening to the Cardboard Herald. As always, everything we do is ad-free and audience-supported. If you'd like to help keep it that way, find the Patreon link at the top of our webpage, cardboardherald.com. We have several levels of support with various rewards. If you enjoyed the show, we do a whole bunch of other stuff, including reviews, interviews, and recommendations across writing, podcasts, and video. You can find that on our YouTube channel or by visiting any of our social media or our website. So with that out of the way, thank you again for listening to the Cardboard Herald.
Cats, they do what they want.
Yeah, totally. Well, now it's an honor because the vocal presentation of your cat is now accompanying the visual presentation of Jamie Stegmeier's cat, who showed up on a podcast I did with him a few weeks ago.